This episode of Bookworm is brought to you by Morgan. Turn to-dos into daily action plans with Morgan. You can learn more by going to morgan.so, and you can save 10% on a subscription when you use the code LifeHQ10 at checkout.
So, Mike, you came down with another sickness.
I did. I'm getting really good at this.
You are. I tell you what. When it comes to sicknesses, you're taking the cake in the last couple months.
I'm a pro. Yeah. It was pretty rough last week. So thank you for your flexibility in moving the recording. Feeling significantly better now. So excited to dive into today's book. I don't think we have any follow-up items, do we?
We have 0 follow-up items. I actually had to do a double take, and then I was like, oh, I remember. Meditations was just so all over the place, for me, that I was like, I had absolutely nothing that I needed to act on for that one, and you didn't either. So we have no follow-up items, but you sent out a newsletter today and had something interesting in there. So you want to tell us about what's interesting in there?
Yeah. By the time this goes live, the Practical PKM cohort will be available. Actually, as we record this, it's available now. So I worked with a designer developer on a fancy new sales page. I shared it with you last week. I'm really proud of how it turned out. By the way, the video on that sales page, I'm not sure if you watched the video, that was completely done using the part-time video editor. So I walked into my office, I hit record, I sent them the file. They did everything from that point on. So that long-term follow-up item of working with VidPros is that one's going well. But the Practical PKM cohort page, I think, looks amazing. It was developed by the amazing Martin Chris, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you want to find out more about the cohort, you can go to join.practicalpkm.com. Just a couple of bullets, I guess. It's going to kick off on January 27th, and it's going to go for 4 weeks. There will be 3 sessions each week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all at 1 p.m. Central Time. If you miss a session, you can't attend, whatever, everything is going to be recorded. With this cohort, the goal is to help you get a PKM system that you can trust. And hopefully throughout the process, I'm going to explain how some of these workflows are configured. You're going to tweak them. You're going to make it your own, and you're going to have a custom system by the time that you leave. However, this time around, I am actually giving LifeHQ to everybody who joins, so that you've got a scaffolding to work off of. Instead of building everything from scratch, you can open up LifeHQ and you can just kind of tweak the things that I've put together there. And I'll explain all of the concepts. It's built on a couple of my frameworks. One of them is the PKM stack. Another one is the creativity flywheel. I really believe that creativity is something that we need to lean into. I believe everybody is born creative. Doesn't matter if you're an accountant or a lawyer. You can still express creativity in the knowledge work that you do. And when you are able to express that, you make more sense of the information that you've collected. You do better work, more quality work, more valuable work. And so that's going to be the emphasis of this cohort. There's 2 options available. One is just the cohort, which includes LifeHQ, also includes all my other video courses and a year of access to the library. That one is $997. It's actually $200 off until January 20th. So if you're listening to this and you want to save $200 from the day this comes out, you've only got a couple of days to do that. If you already bought LifeHQ, you can actually apply the whole cost of LifeHQ towards the cohort. And then there's another version, which I think I maybe mentioned a little bit on the podcast, but I'm going to try working with a small group and going through group coaching on kind of going from 0 to 1 in terms of setting up your systems and actually creating consistently. So regardless of how much time you've got to work with, the emphasis here would be on figuring out your platform, figuring out your niche, then creating and publishing consistently on some social platform to attract attention, building an email list, building a digital product, and eventually making your first sale. So that one is $19.97, and that includes a lifetime access to the library. So you can find all the details. You can watch the video over on the sales page. And if anyone has any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to ask. I am also, by the way, I was convinced by the designer developer to offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you sign up for Practical PKM and you put in the work, you show up for the sessions, you try to apply the things that I'm teaching, and it just doesn't work for you, I'll give you your money back. That's what's new in Mike's world. And if you want to be a part of this cohort, join.practicalpkm.com.
Nice. I'm excited for that one to see. When does the first session launch again?
January 27th. So that's
January 27th.
That's a Monday. Yep, at 1 p.m. Central Time.
So this will come out. You'll have a couple days to hit that one deal, and then a week later it'll start.
Yep.
On the 27th. Fantastic. Okay, are you ready to get into today's book?
Let's do it.
All right, so today's book is Simple Marketing for Smart People, the one question you need to win customers without gimmicks, hype, or hard selling. Now, you originally pitched this book to me because you had read it already, and you had told me that it was an interesting book. I think at some point I had mentioned or something marketing, or I don't know, and you threw it on my radar. And when I read it and I read the Amazon description of it, I was like, this is exactly the kind of book that I want to read. So for my day job, we're thinking about marketing. We're thinking about promoting the engineering program, and how would we do that, and how do we, help out in that realm. I am not a marketer, right, at all. By no means. I am the person that they describe in the book as having the negative orientation toward marketing, which we'll get to, where it's like, I feel like marketing is like schemy and sleazy, and like, I just don't like it, even though I acknowledge that there's good marketing and bad marketing. But one of the things that like really drew me to this book is basically like how it stated that it was going to simplify, allow you to focus, stop thinking about all these channels. Do I do YouTube? Do I do TikTok? Do I do Instagram? What do I do? Because I've thought about marketing things in the past, prior podcasts, this podcast, different things. And I've been like, I don't know how to do this. And I see these people doing these things. Do we do giveaways? Do we do awards? Do we do like whatever it is? And I wanted a different approach to it. And I wanted to hopefully think about it in a different way. Now, I didn't know the name Billy Broas, right? I knew Tiago Forte through the Second Brain stuff, right? I've not done his class, but I knew Tiago Forte. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this could be an interesting book. And the reason why was because Tiago Forte did not come across to me as a marketer. Like I would not put him in the camp of marketer. I had no idea who Billy Broas was, but I was like, well, Tiago is not a marketer. He just created a product, right, around Second Brain and those type of things. So I was like, this could be a really, really cool book to read. So the book has 13 chapters. So it's got an introduction and 13 chapters. And they break down and they kind of outline this plan called belief building, which we're going to get into in more detail. So going into this, I knew not very much about marketing. I knew that I didn't like it and I thought it was schemy. And I was interested in learning more. Mike, how did you approach this book? Not for the show, because you've already read it once, but when you originally picked it up back before you had read it, how did you approach this book?
Good question. I don't remember.
Okay.
So I'll say that I don't have the negative visceral reaction to marketing that it sounds like you did or do.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. However, I worked prior to going independent for a digital marketing agency, and I realized that marketing, when you work with good people who are selling good products, it's not the used car salesman. You're just trying to make the sale. You're able to help people by solving a problem that they're experiencing. And so that was kind of my frame of reference for marketing in general. I have read lots of marketing resources. I think probably all the way on the other end of the spectrum would be a guy named Alex Hormozy. Do you know who that is?
Only because you've said the name, but I have no other no other knowledge but that.
Go look him up on Instagram and tell me if he's not exactly what you were picturing.
Okay. Based on the way you've prefaced it, I have a feeling. So go
Well,
ahead.
let me just say, I actually really like Alex Hormozy's stuff, and I have bought both of his books so far. I think $100 million offers and $100 million leads. There's some really good stuff in there. However, it is it's very different than simple marketing for smart people, I think. And honestly, going back through it this time, I found myself, I think I kind of land somewhere in the middle, probably more towards the Billy Broas simple marketing end if I had to pick like one end of the spectrum.
Okay.
But I do think that just because you've got a countdown timer on something doesn't mean you're a sleazy marketer.
Yeah.
I am really kind of nervous about this conversation, to be honest.
Why?
Because I don't know, I have an idea based on the description that you just shared with me of what perspective you're coming from when we're going to talk about marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where this is going to end up. Yeah. Basically.
So I'll foreshadow here. Like let me ease your concern or nervousness or whatever it is. When they started referencing marketing as education, I was like, these are my people, right? Like, because I mean, that's what I do. I educate, right, for a living. So I was like, oh, this actually makes a ton of sense. The way they pitched it. So if you're okay with it, let's just roll right into it. And we can roll right into the intro of the book. All right. So we start off, and very, very early in it, and this is a thing I have bolded in my notes. It's about education, right? Like, so in my mind, I put the word all in there. It's all about education. And I was like, oh, okay. So they hooked me from the beginning of like, what are we doing when we're marketing? When we're marketing, we're educating people about something. And I was like, I can resonate with this. This makes total sense to me. Then they double down on that. Again, this is all still in the introduction. They double down on that and they say all of the other stuff, the tactics, whether you use this tool or that tool, or whether you use a countdown timer, or whether you use giveaways or whatever it might be, that's the icing on the cake. That's the cherry on top. That is not what marketing is all about. Those are ways that you market once you understand what you're actually trying to market and you've developed a way to educate people. All of this was like, this is what I need to hear. And this was in the first, before we even hit chapter 1. And I was like, okay, this makes total sense for me. So hopefully that quells your like concerns about this. Like, I loved the approach that these two guys took in terms of marketing, because it wasn't that like over the top, try this, do this kind of a thing. It was much more of a get back to basics kind of an approach. And that really, really resonated with me from the beginning of the book.
Yeah. So I don't think it's quite that simple.
Okay.
My impression after rereading it again is this is a very smartly packaged, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. But just like hearing you describe this as education, you got to be careful, because if you attach to that, I don't think you're going to be doing a very good job as a marketer, because marketing is much more than just educating your potential buyers. Most people are not going to give you the amount of attention that you would need in order to educate them about anything, because there's so much information that is constantly coming at them, which is where, some of the hooks and the things like that, that's not necessarily a sleazy used car salesman tactic. I don't think you should have good hooks in your subject lines. And like, I'm on YouTube and I know that I need to up my thumbnail game. There are certain things that you do with the thumbnails to get the clicks. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're duping somebody or you're tricking somebody in order to get them to click on your video. But if you don't try to get people to click on your video, they're never going to watch your video.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, I think, and maybe you can change my mind by the time we get to the end of this. The first time I went through this, I think I was like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary breath of fresh air. People really need to read this. And the second time through, I was kind of like, well, I see where you're coming from, but I also think that you are applying some marketing sauce here by making it super, super simple. So
I definitely got that impression too, that like the marketing was done in this book. Like this book is a form of marketing for, more so for Billy, I think, than for Tiago.
So let's mention that real briefly, because there is a whole nother thing that Billy Broas does. He's a marketing consultant, independent contractor. So he worked with Tiago as his marketing guy. He mentions, I think, a course in this book, but he doesn't even tell you what it is. I've signed up for it. I dug around. I found it. It's called the 5 Light Bulbs. I think it's like $500. Okay. And it's a good marketing framework for putting together messaging. I don't think it's the be all end all framework for all marketing. And even some of the stuff about like, oh, the channel doesn't matter. The channel does matter. They get into some of that nuance later in the book, but right up front, they're trying to build the beliefs, as they talk about in the book, a certain way, and they make some statements that is kind of like, not so much. But I love the fact that Tiago is involved with this and shares a lot of, here's how I did it personally. There's some issues I have with some of the examples there too, which maybe we'll get to. But I do think that Billy really knows what he's talking about. Just, I think with anything marketing related, and probably with any book that you would read, the perspective has to be, what of this am I going to take? And what of this am I going to discard? Yeah. You can't just assume that, oh, this is the playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. So you alluded to it there. Essentially, the way this book is structured is certain chapters are written by Billy, and they're like the fundamentals, the here's what you need to know kind of chapters, or here's this framework that we're gonna use. And then other chapters are written by Tiago, and Tiago would then say like, and this is how I applied that. Like, this is how I applied that when I was building, Second Brain, or how this concept, changed the way I thought about, whatever it might be. So like there's a back and forth there, and then some of them are written. I think there's at least one that's written by both of them, but I can't remember off the top of my head whether that's true or not. Is that true? No, it looks like
so. I have multiple versions of this. I have the paperback version that I bought initially. I have since then also bought the Kindle version and also the Audible version.
Okay.
The Audible version is actually kind of nice because it's written by both of them, and it's very clear when one person is talking and when the other person is talking.
Yeah.
Especially because I know Tiago's voice really well from all the time that I've followed Building a Second Brain. So that was kind of interesting to experience it that way. I don't think, the first time through the book that I would necessarily recommend you just listen to it. Although there were some things that hit me a little bit different when I listened to it as opposed to read it. And I've actually gone through this book, I think probably 3 or 4 times since I bought it. I actually went back and read it again, but then also listened to it because I saw that it was available, and I just wanted to see how it hit different. And there were definitely some things that when I heard them talking about it as opposed to reading it on the page, it raised a few more questions, let's say.
Okay. So I'm ready to move on to chapter 1. We'll give you one last thing from the introduction that says, they say marketing can be human first, education driven, creative, fun, and yes, profitable. And if you're interested in that, this is the book for you. So if you're thinking about whether or not you want to read this book, you're thinking about whether or not you're even interested enough in marketing to read this book, or interested in their take on marketing, they're trying to make marketing human first, education driven, creative, fun, and then profitable as well.
Yep.
All right. So we'll roll into chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called The Achilles Heel of Smart People by Billy Broas. So the nature of this chapter is to try to call out this idea of smart people. Now, I personally don't like the phrase smart people. Like, I think it's an annoying and frustrating phrase to me, but I understand why they wrote it this way. They basically wrote it in a way, like, I think you could say the Achilles heel of content creators, the Achilles heel of people who are focused on producing the product. Like, I actually think that, or product creators might even be a better way to say that, right? Because what they're driving home in my mind in this chapter is not marketers. The Achilles heel of the people who create the thing, but aren't the marketing people who are going to then go and market the people. So they're laying out this idea, this, they'll refer to it as a double-edged sword, that the thing that gives them the ability to create good content is also the thing that makes them bad marketers. So they overthink the thing. They go in there and they're like, well, I'm overthinking the marketing. I need to be focused on this thing, and I'm down in the weeds on this other thing. So the analytical mind they talk about in here, and the fact that you can deep dive into something, but then the struggle is you dive into too deep of stuff, and then people aren't abstract enough to actually understand what you're doing. They try to get into activities too fast, and they don't focus on the background core message too much. So essentially the nature of this chapter is, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, like, all the stuff you're doing wrong, right? Hey, creator of a thing, here's all the stuff you're doing wrong in marketing. That was kind of my gist and my takeaway from chapter 1.
Kinda. I don't think it's quite that confrontational, maybe, but I do think that there is a tendency for quote unquote smart people to get too into the weeds. That's the thing that they're trying to warn you against. The thing I have issue with here, though, is, like, essentially what they're trying to say is you need to focus on the critical parts of marketing. You need to not overcomplicate things. And then over the next several chapters, they're going to lay out their framework for creating these different beliefs. And then tying this all back later on, they mention, like, all of the things that you share should be tied to these core beliefs. Now, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is just starting. I mentioned the small group coaching I want to do with folks who want to make and sell their first digital product. So that's who I have in mind. They have no idea what their product is going to be. And if they're going to try and build the belief ladder for something that they have no idea whether this is the right product for the market, like, they can spend a whole bunch of work building all these beliefs, and they're just going to be shouting into the void. I think there has to be a balance between doing the back end work of simplifying the messaging once you know this is my thing. For example, how many different things did Tiago try before he nailed down building a second brain? That's a rhetorical question. I have no idea, but I'm sure it wasn't the very first idea that he had. At some point, he decided, there's enough signal here that this is the thing I really want to put the wood behind the arrow. And so I'll build out the beliefs around building a second brain, and I'm able to see the results that he talks about in this book. But if you don't know what your voice is, what your thing is, you have to try a bunch of stuff. I made a comment, I think, in the last episode. It's something I say all the time. Make noise, listen for signal. And the lesson that I learned was, whenever I talked about productivity, whenever I talked about creativity, now I would get some people who would respond and like and whatever. But the minute that I started talking about how I did that stuff using Obsidian, I got 10 times more engagement. So Obsidian is the thing for me. And I wouldn't have landed on that. In fact, I didn't try that at the beginning when I went independent. I was trying to do the general productivity stuff that I had done when I was working with agent efficiency and the suite setup and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Like, there's truth in what they're saying, but I also think it's dangerous to just blindly go into that. You have to be willing to diverge and then converge repeatedly.
Yeah. So I think, so this ties back into the work that I've done in the entrepreneurial space, right? I think where there's a disconnect here is the product market fit there's a difference between the product market fit. Sorry, the reason why I laughed, y'all, is because we're on a Zoom call and the balloons just came up because I made some hand motion that made balloons pop up, which technology. What are you gonna do? So there's a difference between product market fit, which is what you just described, right? Like you described the idea of we're trying to figure out what is the product and where is the market for that product and how do those two things connect? And then there's marketing. Once I've figured out product market fit, how do I market that to them? I think Billy and Tiago wrote this book as we've got product market fit figured out. Now they don't ever mention it. If I'm remembering correctly, they don't ever mention the idea of product market fit and like actually doing in the world that I worked a lot in. We would do a thing called customer discovery, right? Like so your whole process where you were figuring out what should I be doing and where should I be doing it? And then you landed on Obsidian. That was a big part of a customer discovery process. And then you discovered, oh, there's this whole pool of customers that sit inside the Obsidian world. Okay, I'm gonna go there. And then your marketing can focus now in on the belief building ladder and doing the things that you need to do for that group. So that would have been a good thing, as we're processing it out loud. This is one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because as we're processing it out loud, there could have been a clear distinction between, hey, there is customer discovery, there's product market fit section, and then there's marketing. And we're going to focus maybe more on the marketing section of it. Because he's talking about, one of the backdrops to this whole book is Billy will refer to his beer brewing course. And that's kind of what got him started on all of this is he got into beer brewing and he realized, I could develop a course for this. And then it's the whole process of like, how do I market that beer brewing course, and that's what kind of got him into marketing. But he kind of had the product market fit already figured out is there are people out there that want to learn how to brew beer, and I'm going to help teach them that. And that was he already had his target audience, I guess.
Yeah, I think though that marketing is not something that you put on the back burner until you have product market fit.
I
It's
agree.
something that is part of the process. And just like sales, by the way, anyone who says that they are not a salesperson but is married is a liar because you have sold yourself at least once. So we tend to, have these negative stigmas that are attached to these terms of sales and marketing specifically. They're not the same thing, but we think like that's not really for me. And I think this book does a good job of maybe breaking down some of that stigma, making it more approachable. But I also, at this point in the book, am realizing that this isn't something that you put on the side until you're ready and then you tackle it. And this is the system. And that's sort of how it comes off to me the second time through this, and especially hearing you describe it, as the first time that you've encountered this material.
Yeah, I can see that. So chapter 2 is I Can Relate. So this is a chapter written by Tiago, where he basically talks about, essentially being a smart person and trying to market something. And then he goes through what he's doing. He talks about the fact that he's got to juggle a lot of balls trying to do an online business, and that, communication is key here. He goes through his 3 mistakes. So his 3, and they quote it, smart person mistakes. And mistake 1 was thinking the product will sell itself. Mistake 2 was making incorrect assumptions about success. And then mistake 3 was seeing marketing as inherently bad. So they outline these 3 mistakes and give some details there. Tiago offers this mindset shift. He says, nothing about sales or marketing is inherently bad. It's how they're done that's often bad, which that really, really resonated with me, that like marketing is necessary. You have to do marketing. Or you're just not going to sell a product, right? Like, so if you can not do marketing and you're not going to sell anything, or you can do marketing and then thinking about it as later on down the road, really, where it's the tactics that tend to give us that bad taste in our mouth. And then, he doubles down here on the think of marketing as teaching. You're teaching people how to value your product. You're teaching people, the value of your product and where it goes from there. So this chapter, I thought did a good job following up on chapter 1, because it gave clear and tangible examples of how Tiago, resonated with what was covered in chapter 1.
Yeah, the mistake number 1 in particular really resonates with me. Thinking the product will sell itself. That's never going to be the case, and I think it's easy to fall into that. especially when you spend so much time making something. Life HQ is the thing that comes to mind for me. And the reason that was a successful launch wasn't because I built this incredible done-for-you Obsidian vault, although they're gotten a bunch of reviews and feedback from people who have said as much. But the reason that it was successful is because I wrote, I think, 10 to 12 emails that I sent out to the list prior to launching the product.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. And it's easy to think like, well, I don't really have the time or the bandwidth in order to pull this off. But I know that if I hadn't written those emails, that there'd be a handful of people maybe who discovered it, but most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I find myself with the cohort currently. I mentioned that I made it available, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, maybe I can just, throw it out there and people will sign up and I don't have to write the emails. Like, no, you have to write the emails.
Yep.
There's no way around it. And it's not a bad thing. That's the other thing. Mistake number 3, seeing marketing as inherently bad. That's the other thing I learned from the Life HQ launch, because I wrote all those emails and I was talking about the frameworks and kind of my approach to the way that I built things. And I realized that, there were a lot of people who, whether or not they were interested in Life HQ at all, they got a lot out of reading the emails because I was trying my best to write things that were valuable and helpful. So yeah, recognize, that you got to do it, but also like, it's not a negative thing. And people aren't just waiting to get that one last email that you sent them that's going to push them over the edge, and now they're going to unsubscribe. It's hard when you have a newsletter, because every time you send it, you get a bunch of people who unsubscribe. And it's like, man, if I just would have never sent the newsletter, my list would be bigger. But no, it's good to have people identify, either this is for me or it's not for me. And the people who unsubscribe, they're basically saying this isn't for me. Well, that's fine. Maybe they'll be back. Maybe they won't. Maybe my thing just isn't for you. And that's fine. I hope you find what you're looking for. Yeah. That's ultimately a good thing.
All right. So my second one, or mistake 2, that was one of the ones that got me, was incorrect assumptions about success. I'm intrigued with what you think about this, Mike, because you and I have kind of talked about this loosely before, and I want to hear you pontificate on this point. So production values don't matter until later, way later. If you invest money in the business, whether it be a fancy video, a new website, a sophisticated graphic design, does not automatically mean it will pay off. I think the second half of that is accurate. Just because you put a bunch of like money or time or whatever into making something look cool, it doesn't mean it's going to be successful. And this is where I think we get into a chicken and an egg problem. You need something of value to market, and then you also need good marketing for that thing of value. So what do you like how do you balance doing both of those, where it's like, I'm trying to develop the thing that's valuable and I'm trying to figure out how to market the thing that I just made that's valuable? And this is where I think this one really stood out to me as like, yeah, that's actually really hard. That's really hard to do.
Yeah. So having just redid my sales page, I think the big thing that gives me is it looks professional. I don't know if other people are going to feel the same way, but I think because it looks so professional, it sort of validates the offer. However, I know that there are lots of data points to share that doesn't really matter. I remember hearing a J. Klaus Creator Science podcast where he was interviewing, I think it was Johnny Miller, who does the like nervous system mastery. It's this big cohort essentially for high achievers who want to have a better mental handle on things.
Okay.
That very oversimplified. He would probably cringe at that description. But I remember him saying that when he put it together, he had a Notion page that he published for the first cohort. And then he worked with a designer developer and made it look way more professional. and actually got less people to sign up for that cohort than the crappy Notion version that he had out there. Yeah. And so I think, there's a lot of nuance that goes into why maybe the sales weren't as high for the third one, I think, when he launched the new sales page. But the lie, I think, is that you need to have something that looks uber professional in order to stand out from everything else. Ultimately, I think if you have a good message, if you are solving a problem in an interesting way, then people will give you a shot, whether or not you have some fancy website.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for your take. You ready to move on to chapter 3?
Let's do it.
Okay, chapter 3 is an essential metaphor for this book. So chapter 3 is called the upstream, downstream marketing metaphor. And I would say behind belief building, right, the idea or the concept of belief building, this is probably the second most important idea that they present in this book. So they say, picture a river. You've got the upstream section, you've got the midstream section, you've got the downstream section, and your core message occurs at the upstream, and it then flows into the midstream and the downstream. So if you don't put enough time and effort into the upstream, it's not that the midstream and the downstream don't matter. It's the fact that you're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm at the midstream and the downstream section. So therefore, they are trying to change your thinking in terms of spend more time, focus more on the upstream section. That way, good stuff flows down through the system, and we can fix the issues when we get down to, or they're less significant issues when we get down to the downstream portion. He makes a reference here, and I don't remember the exact details of it, but something around cooking, right? Like if I use good ingredients from the beginning in the upstream section, it's easier to tweak the flavors in the downstream section. And if I use bad or rotten ingredients in the upstream section, I really can't fix the downstream. It's going to be bad, no matter what I do, or it's going to be subpar. No matter what I do. So in the upstream section, he's going to say, focus on that core message, that central argument for somebody to choose your product. In the midstream section, focus on your marketing channels. So these are like the big things you would use. I would use YouTube. I would use a podcast, a newsletter, some sort of social media, something like that, TV commercials. So channels basically is what you would call them. So it's your marketing channels. And then in the downstream section, it's your actual tactics, your marketing tactics. So this is where you start to say, do I do giveaways? Do I do contests, referral programs, limited time offers? Do I do the countdown timer? What do I do? And what he's basically, just to drive home this point one more time, if my core message is off, my channels and my tactics are going to be subpar no matter whether I pick the perfect thing or not. And if my core message is on spot or on point, then I can have like a little bit of grace in terms of my channels and my marketing tactics. That being said, you can optimize all of them. So if your core message is good, your channels are good, and your tactics are good, boom, you're hitting a home run and everything's perfect. So that's kind of just a general overview of chapter 3, which I think is one of the main sections of this book and the framework that they lay out.
Yeah, so I like this description of the upstream, midstream, downstream. The approach to this, though, is purely as a marketer and not as a consumer.
Okay.
So if I were giving somebody advice about, I'll just use the small group coaching that I mentioned earlier. I wouldn't start with the upstream. I wouldn't figure out the marketing channels from there and then downstream focus on the tactics. I would say, where do you already hang out? And then just join the conversation there. So like, you don't want to, like if I'm doing this for my brand, Practical PKM, for example, the upstream, your core message, why someone should choose your product or service. I didn't start with that and then figure out, well, I guess I better do YouTube. I went through Ali Abdal's part-time YouTuber Academy and I was like, this seems like a good fit. I guess I'll make YouTube videos. And then by creating a bunch of YouTube videos, I was able to find the fit. And then that affected the upstream and the downstream. So, I like the metaphor. I think it's accurate, but again, that's not the only way to approach this stuff. So I think this is a good chapter. It's a good metaphor. And the key takeaway here, I think, is to go upstream, right? Don't focus on the tactics. Well, I just got to get a quiz in place, and then I'm going to get all of these email signups. If your core messaging is garbage, all those email signups are not gonna matter. They're not going to stay on your list because they were really only interested in the thing that you were giving away, and they're not interested in anything that you're doing. That's what you want to avoid. So, yeah, I just, again, like, you got to figure out, what am I going to do with this? It's not as simple as, well, just start, upstream, and then everything's going to click into place.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so the fun thing about this is sometimes Mike and I disagree, right? Like, so as somebody who hasn't thought a lot about marketing coming into this really, really resonated with me, because, like, when I was thinking about, talking to the internet, back in the years ago when I was making that show, I never once thought about, oh, well, how should I market this to people? Like, I should market it as really interesting conversations with people who talk to the internet and who make things for the internet. Like, and that's the way and do you want to come hear these really interesting conversations? Are you looking for a new show where you hear about the people who make the things you love? I never thought of it like that. You know what I thought of it as? Well, maybe if I give away a pair of AirPods, I can get, like, more people to, like, click on the link. And it's, and like, as dumb as that sounds right now, that is the way I thought about marketing. It was like, oh, just get more people to click on the download or subscribe button. It doesn't matter if they resonate with, like, do they actually like the show? Do they want to listen to more episodes? Are you trying to catch them as recurring people? It was just like, no, just get them to come and visit the thing, whatever you're doing. And I think that was an ineffective way to do it. Like, that was a wrong approach.
So that's what a lot of people do. I remember when I worked with the family business, going to the trade shows for special education trade shows, and we'd have a booth, and we'd get, a handful of people who would stop by, and I'd talk to them, and they'd be interested in what we had. But there was always some booth that was giving away, like, a Coach purse or something, and everyone congregated around that booth. And they had thousands of signups for their raffle, but nobody cared about the product or the service whatsoever. And every time I saw one of those, I was like, man, what a complete waste of time.
Have you read anything or seen anything where it's like, is it a complete waste of time? Like, what is the better? Because, I mean, you're getting, to not do that, you're getting higher value, but a lower number of leads. And to do that, you're getting a high number of very low value leads, right? And, like, I wonder what actually pans out better in the long run.
That's a good question. I don't think it's a simple answer. I mean, there are probably some products where they just need to be aware that you're out there. And so mission accomplished if they signed up and you just spam them with email from now until 10 years from now. But I don't know. My dad and I used to argue about this all the time, because he would want to just buy a email list of, these are all the special education directors in whatever organization, and then send out an email. And he I think he kind of assumed that because he had their email list and he sent them an email, because he believed that the product would solve a problem that they had, that they were going to open it and read it.
Yeah. Hold on. What mistake is this? Mistaking this is the product will sell itself. That's mistake one.
Yeah, maybe, but they're not even opening it. It's probably not even, landing in their inbox, because you can't do email marketing that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I kept, trying to explain, well, people got to opt in and they got to double confirm. Yep. No. We just need to send them stuff.
Well, but I mean, think about it. Like, that's how marketing used to be done. You just send it to them in the mail.
Yep.
Like, you
exactly.
just send them stuff in the mail, and you didn't care. Like, you didn't know if they looked at it, but it was in their mailbox, or at least you thought it would be. So
right. I don't know. Personally, I have always believed, I think even before I read this book, that there is value in offering somebody something that is actually valuable to them. They fill out the form to get the thing, whether that's, my free starter vault or book notes or whatever. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm going to make it easy to unsubscribe. I'm not going to add you to the list until you click the link that I send you just to confirm you actually did mean to fill out the thing. Because at that point, we've got a decent chance of building a relationship, and I'm the right person to solve a problem that you have. If I'm not, you shouldn't have signed up in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, like my email list is not big. I think it's like 7,600 people ish. And I take pride in the fact that the people that are on there actually want what I have to offer. It's every time I send out a newsletter, it's like a 6% click rate. It's like almost a 50% open rate. And there's a bunch of people, who signed up a long time ago and they haven't opened anything. I need to actually clean that up. I got to build that automation. Well, I haven't opened anything in 6 months. You sure you still want to receive this stuff? Let me know. Otherwise, I'll remove you. But I just think that email is a really cool platform. And what's interesting about it is everybody who, if you do it the right way, everybody who you send an email to has raised their hand and said, I want to receive something from you.
Yeah.
I take that seriously. That's a big responsibility, I think, but it's also really freaking cool when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there are 7,600 people who want to receive my newsletter. Like, that's awesome.
Well, and the hilarious thing is you said, my list isn't that big. It's 7,600 people. And the first thing I went was, holy cow, you got 7,600 people. And I understand there are people out there with, 1 million and 100 million and blah, 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 blah. But it's like that's a lot of people that have said, I want your thing. Like, give me more of your thing, which I think is awesome.
I'm a big fan of time blocking. In my opinion, it's the most important thing that you can do for your productivity. It makes sure that you set aside time for your important tasks, and it's critical for allowing your brain to focus on the task at hand so you can follow through on the intentions that you set. Now, the process is pretty simple. You start with your meetings and appointments on your calendar, and then you just schedule time for your important tasks until every hour has a job. The key is that the time block plan should exist outside your task manager. And since I use Obsidian as my task manager, this has always been a little tricky. Fortunately, the folks at Morgan have built a direct integration with Obsidian, which allows you to schedule those most important tasks on your planning calendar and sync the completion status back to Obsidian when you're done. Morgan is a really cool scheduling app that I've been using myself for the last couple of months. It's kind of like a calendaring app, but that's selling it short. And while it has a lot of calendar management features, what I love about Morgan is the emphasis on planning and the ability to pull your tasks and your calendars together into one interface, which is perfect for time blocking. Now, with Morgan, you can easily create realistic plans by seeing how much time that you have available and then slotting in your important tasks into that time, forcing intentional planning and prioritization. If you find it hard to sift through your tasks or you struggle with knowing what the most important task is at any given time, something that I fell into a lot before I started time blocking, Morgan can also recommend which tasks to schedule when based on the metadata that is in your tasks. And those tasks can be pulled in from multiple services, not just Obsidian. So if you have work tasks from your team that uses Notion, ClickUp, or Todoist, for example, you can schedule those alongside your personal tasks and have all of those things in one beautiful user interface. Now, if you want to see how I use Morgan, I've actually got a YouTube video I just published which walks through how the Obsidian integration works and how I've got it set up. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to see that video. And if you want to try Morgan for yourself, you can do so for free by going to morgan.so or by using the link in the show notes. And if you decide that Morgan is for you, you can save 10% on a subscription when you use the coupon code LifeHQ10 at checkout. So once again, that's morgan.so, morgen.so, and coupon code LifeHQ10 at checkout to save 10% on a Morgan subscription. Our thanks to Morgan for making a great scheduling app for Obsidian nerds like me and their support of the Bookworm podcast.
Chapter 4, the one question that makes marketing simple. This is a Billy Broas chapter. Now, this, I would say, is the central point of the book, right? This is the goal of what they're trying to do. They're trying to lay out this idea of the belief building process. So what is the one question that makes marketing simple? It's what does my prospect need to believe in order to buy? So that would be the one question. What does my prospect need to believe in order to buy? They will emphasize this point. This is the only question you need to ask yourself to develop your core message. You'll take the answers from this question and use them to create your marketing material. They say this is the belief building process. So when you do belief building, your role shifts from seller to educator and guide, right? And then this allows you to tailor kind of what you need to create in order to move a person, right, from not going to buy in order to going to buy, right? So now we actually got into essentially the crux of like, what are we doing as marketers? We're trying to move a person along a chain or up a ladder or whatever you want to call it, right? Like along this system to get them to buy a thing. They actually give you a kind of an outline of what you would do at the very end. It's a 4-step part. You ask the question, what does my customer need to believe in order to buy? 2, your answers to the question go into the core messaging document. You then turn that document into marketing material, right? That makes a clear, compelling, and honest argument. And then your newly informed prospect will understand your argument. They'll buy. Everything will be sunshine and roses. And that's their 4-step outline. And at this point, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it to Mike.
Yeah. So first time I read this, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do this.
Which is the way I felt. Okay, so go ahead. Now give us some more detail.
So I bought the 5 light bulbs, right? And that is a good marketing framework. I can tell you that introduces a whole bunch of more questions. So the one question that you need in order to improve your marketing, like that's a lie.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Like that, this is the thing I'm trying to wrestle through. I understand what they're doing, and this is the one that you should pay attention to at this point in the journey.
Yes.
But the whole, like the 5 light bulbs, I got super excited about this when I went through it. I went through the whole course, and what I did is I actually built an Obsidian template for this using the Kanban plugin, so that I can create a new note inside of my marketing/5 light bulbs folder for whatever product I'm going to be doing. And it has the columns.
You have a 5 light bulbs folder. Okay, keep going.
Yes. However, I will tell you, like, these are not revolutionary questions. These are basic marketing questions. This is a lot like a lot of other marketing frameworks that I have been exposed to. So it starts with identifying your ideal customer. What's the problem or challenge that your customer is facing? What are the other paths that they have tried? What are the keys to success for them? What's the name of your product? What's the price? And what's the customer's desired outcome? What does their new life look like after they've bought your thing, right? So that's all important stuff that really I think is necessary for a full marketing plan. And so this is sort of like, think of simple marketing for smart people as the lead magnet for the 5 light bulbs, because I think that's really what it is, even though there's not a direct connection that he makes with that. Like, I see now how this one question gets you thinking this way, and then you go into the 5 light. Okay, now I see how to actually apply this.
Help me out, Mike. Did you tell me the 5 light bulbs?
Just now, yeah, basically. So like my ideal customer, that's the first one, I guess. That's not actually a light bulb, but that's okay. Who are you talking to?
Because I was going to say, you said 7 things. So I'm confused at like, what are the 5?
So my columns are the ideal customer. And then I think the first light bulb is the status quo. So what is the one problem or challenge that your customer is facing? And then these are kind of in the 5 light bulbs. There's this metaphor of like building the bridge from one side to the other. Okay. So then that's the first one. The next one is what other paths have they tried? Then the third one is your approach. So what are the keys to success? That really is a lot of the belief building that they're talking about in this particular book. The fourth one is the offer. So the name of the product and the price. Those are 2 different questions, but they're part of that light bulb. And then what's the customer's desired outcome is the 5th one.
Okay.
The new life once they have bought your thing and they've achieved the transformation.
Okay. All right, so I'm trying to process this. So if you'll allow me to go on a little mini tangent here, I thought, okay, well, let's try this. Like, let's put this into practice and let's try to focus on this, one message or this one question to get to the core message. So as a reminder, what does my prospect need to believe in order to buy? So I thought, well, what could I do? Like right now, tomorrow, what could I do? Well, I've done a lot of work helping people figure out whether or not they should be an engineering major in college. And then if they should be an engineering major, what type of engineering they should go into, and whether or not they should choose a small private school or a big public school or whatever that is. So it's like, I just called it choosing engineering. So like my product, if you will, would be consulting on choosing engineering as a major in college. And I thought, okay, let's run through this. What do they need to believe in order to buy? Well, they need to believe that it's hard to choose an engineering program. Right? Like I think they would need to believe that, right? Like, because if they don't believe that, then why are they even talking to me? They would need to believe it's hard to choose an engineering major. They would need to believe that engineering is only for people that are good in math and science. Or maybe that's a misbelief. I guess now that I'm thinking about this, that's probably a misbelief, is it's only good.
Right.
Engineering jobs are good and stable jobs. They would need to believe that, because what's the point of getting a degree is to go out and get a job, right? Engineers make a lot of money. That's one of the things that they believe, and I would say it's one of the things that they're going to believe. Again, now that I'm looking through this again, it's like maybe there's misbeliefs and beliefs. Engineering is for smart people. Engineering is hard, right? Like, but I was trying to like list all of the different beliefs that people would have. I think it was helpful, and I think it was very effective, but maybe it doesn't hit your 5 light bulbs.
Well, I agree, but I also don't think it's a complete picture. You know,
Okay.
It's good for getting you to think about things through the right lens, but if you're really going to put together a marketing campaign to get people to choose engineering, you're going to get much further if you go through and you answer all of those questions that I gave you with the 5 light bulbs, as opposed to the one that they gave you in this particular book. And the things that are in the 5 light bulbs, I don't know. I've seen this before. You know, these are standard marketing type questions. They are packaged in a very approachable way, and I think that they are good. And I think, if I was Billy Broas, this is what I would be selling to people who need to put together their own marketing and they don't really know where to start. I don't think there's anything magical about those particular questions. If anything, he's kind of simplified out of all the marketing questions that are out there. These are the ones that I think are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, and there's value in that.
Yeah.
But it's the type of stuff that I have done many times before.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, I like it a lot. I built a template about it, so like it's effective, but it's also, I feel like there are other paths to get to this destination than just the 5 light bulbs, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So you ready to move to chapter 5?
Yep.
All right. Chapter 5 is how I use belief building by Tiago Forte. So basically, Tiago describes, how he thought about this when it was presented to him from Billy. I can't really tell you that I have like a lot coming out of this chapter. Like it didn't really, nothing major jumped out at me. He gives some of his realizations. People can be trusted to make good decisions for themselves if they're presented with the truth. That, just making a bunch of free content doesn't really help you all that much. That you can derail the whole thing by missing a belief. Like I think his realizations were the biggest, positive for me out of this chapter. Otherwise, I didn't get a ton out of this chapter, so I'm not sure if you did or not.
Well, I think there's some important things that he shares here. Like when making content, ask yourself, what belief is this going to instill or strengthen? First time I read this, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta really just take this approach to the content that I make. However, since then I realize I want to make stuff that doesn't fit into these buckets. And so I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I had a YouTube video that I released prior to the one that I published today, and it was the 8 best books of 2024. That video tanked if you look at the analytics on my YouTube channel, because people on my YouTube channel are primarily there because I talk about Obsidian, but I do talk about my reading workflows, and obviously we got this podcast, so this is an important part of my life as well. And if I was just approaching this from belief building. How do I get as many people to buy Life HQ or join the Practical PKM cohort as quickly as possible? I wouldn't make that video, but it's part of who I am. So I made that video.
Yeah.
So I think, again, you got to figure out what of this you're going to apply, what of this you're not going to apply. And I think from the narrative that they are presenting this, it makes sense to say, this is just the plan, follow this. But I think it's also okay to be like, you know what? I want to go against the grain a little bit here.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 6 then. Identifying your customers' existing beliefs. And this one was back to being by Billy Broas. So basically states that you want to hit beliefs that will move them along this chain. And one of the things they've talked about throughout the book at this point, and, we kind of, I can't remember exactly where, I think it's in this chapter, but you don't want the decision to buy to be hard at all. So like after you've done all this stuff and after you've presented all this stuff, the sale makes itself. Like you actually don't, like that's the way they'll pitch this, is if you've done a good enough job at the upstream end of this, the sale kind of makes itself. So this is where he gets into this picture, the belief someone needs to buy from you as a chain. Each belief is linked, as you work through the chain. And therefore, if you have any weak link in the chain, you run the risk of not getting the sale. But if you can step them through this belief chain, right, and you can develop this belief chain well enough that by the time they get to the end of it, the sale happens and everything, everything's good. He talks about the longer belief chains, the details of those, and then the shorter belief chain. So longer belief chain is basically they don't even know that they have a problem or that they need this thing. They don't even know about potential solutions. They don't know who you are, any of that. The shorter belief chains is they understand what they need, but they don't know if it's a good value. They don't know if it's the time to buy. They don't know if it's, your product or whether they should trust you. So there's less links that you have to work them through in order to get there. So, I liked this. I liked the idea of thinking about my customer's belief chain and how do I work them through that belief chain, and just thinking about what the rungs of that belief chain are. So I got a good bit out of this one. One of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea of start off by preaching to the choir, right? Like why go after people that are really, really hard to get? Go after the people. And this gets to your, like, where are you at? Like, where are you engaging in the internet? Where are you engaging in social media? Where are you engaging in those things? Probably those communities are the ones that are closest to you to buy your product. Engage those communities and don't try to like go, have to upsell a whole bunch of people here. I'm going to stop. We can come back into the 3 methods to develop your prospect's current beliefs. But what do you have, Mike?
Well, the 3 methods, just to hit on that: listen for the bad questions your customers ask, ask them questions, and peek into the cycles of your prospect's life. Some of those are easier to do than others. The visual here for the customer in the middle, then the hot prospect, warm prospect, cold prospect, those circles, they make a compelling visual, but I'm not sure how useful that is. At what point does a cold prospect become a warm prospect, become a hot prospect? I don't think it's necessarily easy to identify those distinctions in any given business. It's important. It's an important question to ask, but I don't know. You look at that visual and I just got to get people to say yes to this belief, and then say yes to this belief, and say yes to that belief. And it'd be great if it was that simple. I don't think you probably know, especially if you're just starting out, what are the specific beliefs that are going to align with your customer going from cold to warm to hot. You may have an idea, you may test it, and you may figure out, this one worked, this one didn't. But working through those different data points is going to be really messy. You don't, I don't know. I mean, unless you get a whole bunch of people to just fill out these polls that you put together, you're not going to be able to look at, this is the specific data that associates with this particular belief, which is really what you need in order to construct that sort of thing. So this chapter, I think this is an important perspective, and we should be striving to do this. Just go into it recognizing that it's going to be really, really messy. And the better a way to do this, I think, is not, I'm going to build this belief ladder and I'm going to implement it, and then I'm going to see what sort of results that I get. But if you could figure out a way with every piece of marketing that you put together, what is the hypothesis behind me doing this? What do I expect to happen? And then look at the results from that and figure out, what story is this data telling me that might get you, to where they're talking about with the moving people between the different rings, but it might also provide additional insights. That's the perspective you have to have, though, with any sort of marketing, I think. You're just going to run all these different tiny experiments. You're going to ask, what is the data telling me? And then you're going to rinse and repeat a bunch of different times.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Let's move to chapter 7. So chapter 7 is identifying your customer's required beliefs, and it's by Billy Broas. So a couple of different things that stood out to me in this one is the customer's journey. They break it down into critical stages. So the first stage is awareness, then consideration, then they make a decision about whether to buy. They break down each of those 3 stages in a little bit more. So, we need to ask the questions that will allow us to help the customer move through those stages. I think the most important thing, or the biggest thing that come out of this chapter, is this ladder of importance that comes through here. So, they say to do kind of an experiment or to write a thing that's the ladder of importance for, and then whatever your topic is, where the top rung is what is the success factor on that, the next rung, what is the success factor on that, third rung, fourth rung, fifth rung, and like actually run that ladder to help work your customer through this, journey through your product in order to get to that sale. And in order for you to do that, you got to have the core message, and you have to have done the belief building upstream in order to be able to do this. They do acknowledge that the process of identifying these beliefs is never ending, so you can't ever stop this thing. It's a constant iterative thing that's going to keep going forever. So I think that was the crux of this was, really getting that ladder of importance and matching that with your customer journey, and how do you work them through those different stages.
Yeah, so this was my action item the first time that I read this, and I built out, again, in Obsidian using the canvas, the ladder that they have as a visual from this chapter, where you start at the bottom. In the visual, they have the most important factor at the top. I guess I did this backwards because I feel like the most important factor should be the foundational one at the bottom. So I don't know. But anyways, like they build on one another. That's really the takeaway. And I never finished writing this out for the PKM stuff that I do. I did finish building out the 5 light bulbs for Life HQ, and I'm gonna take another crack at putting together the ladder here. But also, I don't know. I feel like the 5 light bulbs is a better framework for me personally in terms of making this stuff applicable. I don't know. Like looking at this again and looking at the example they have. So, for example, with the visual, they have the most important factor is an eye for composition. The next most important factor, working with light. Below that, next most important factor is storytelling through images, then processing techniques, and then finally the quality of the camera. I feel like the quality of the camera is the one that most people will jump to if they want to take better pictures, for example. So I think this is a really cool example. Like it's easy to understand how this applies to photography. I guess it doesn't translate quite as easily as I had hoped in terms of what are the most important factors for someone who wants to build a custom PKM system. I had trouble with that first time I went through it, but I did get through it when I adopted the 5 light bulbs framework.
The 5 light bulbs. Yeah, that makes sense. This was one of the ones I wanted to do, but I never made it to, and I was going to do it around the choosing engineering, right? Like whether or not engineering should be my major and kind of what college I should go to. So maybe that'll be an action item for me. I'll think about whether or not that makes sense as an action item for me. All right, moving on to chapter 8. You okay to do that?
Yep.
So chapter 8 and 9 are, two peas in a pod. They're belief building part 1 and belief building part 2. And this is where you kind of got into the practical end of it is like, okay, how do you actually do, belief building? So he actually says, first nail down what you want to say, your claim, then decide how you want to say it, your proof. And he gets into this, make a claim and then prove it, and make a claim and then prove it. Not really monumental to me. Kind of got into argument making, if you will, right? Like, I can't remember if this is where, he ties into copywriting. He talks about copywriting at some point in this book and really gets into this idea of copywriting. But, he's kind of talking about how to actually develop this belief building process or the claim and your core message, I guess, if you will. Then he goes into in chapter 9, the first misconception about proof. And he talks about like that proof doesn't only come from, the product or service. It comes from, play, like in the buying process. And there's these different misconceptions about proof. So kind of breaks those down. He says, what if we used a personal story? What if we used an analogy? We again get back to these ideas of, understanding the customer. What is the proof that's going to resonate with them? Gets into goes back to Aristotle and these 3 different concepts: ethos, pathos, and logos. Kind of goes into the ethos, pathos, and logos argument about how those would come into to do your proof, and then recaps it with, hey, well, what do we do in this belief building process? We pick a belief, right? What is this thing we want to share with our audience? We make a claim, and then we prove that claim. So pick a belief, make a claim, prove that claim. So if you think about like the belief building ladder or the ladder of success, there were these different beliefs on there that we had to hit. Well, now he's saying, okay, we take that and we break it down even further and we say, okay, well, what's the belief? What's the claim that we're making? And then how do we prove it to our audience? So it's essentially the layer under the ladder, like the foundational layer under the ladder, if you will, that allows us to prove each one of those before we can make it or move up to the next rung and then move up to the next rung and move up to the next rung.
Yeah, so the ethos, pathos, and logos that he talks about in chapter 9 under the argue like Aristotle, I did not really care for this. I think that the summary of the belief building, which you touched on in chapter 8, which is essentially pick a belief, make a claim, and then prove it, that is effective. But the ethos, pathos, and logos, this is appealing to logic, appealing to emotion, and appealing to integrity. This, to me, reads like a complicated version of a lot of other marketing stuff, which I've read or experienced, which is kind of like pick a pain point and just speak to it.
Yeah.
Maybe this, appeals a little bit more to some people because I guess I can put myself in I can get on board with the belief that, when you're talking about a pain point that somebody has, that feels a little bit negative maybe, and you don't really want to be hurting somebody when you are marketing, but this is just a different way to speak to that. And I don't know, like I don't necessarily myself personally think that when you are agitating a pain point, so to speak, that's necessarily a bad thing, especially if you've gone through the thing and you're speaking from a place of integrity and you've gone through it and you've figured out a solution for somebody. You kind of have a moral obligation, in my opinion, to share what worked. You just got to be careful, I guess, with like when you're sharing that stuff that you're not, making outrageous claims that you can't back up, but that has nothing to do with ethos, pathos, or logos necessarily.
Yeah. When I think about pain points as different, like pain points are something they're already experiencing. So they already have this thing that's causing them pain. And you're really trying to, explain to them or prove to them why your thing alleviates that pain point. So it's like for Life HQ would be like, oh, like my notes and my journal and my daily organizational structure, right, of all the knowledge that comes into my life is just completely chaos and out of whack. Well, here is Life HQ. This is a system for you to organize all of that and to make it actionable and to keep it, driving life forward. Oh, that's a pain I have, right? A pain I have is, everything's all discombobulated. Like, that makes sense to me. So I thought about pain points a little bit differently maybe than the way I heard you describing them.
Well, I think the pain points, they could fit into this ethos, pathos, and logos, though. So, for example, the ethos appeal to integrity, talk about expert opinions or authoritative figures in the field, testimonials from individuals have benefited from your product, data taken from research studies that support your claim, third-party reviews that lend an external voice of approval. I mean, you don't need to understand ethos, pathos, or logos to incorporate that sort of stuff into a marketing page. Pathos is sharing stories that evoke empathy, joy, or other emotions, using imagery that symbolizes deeper sentiments or values, writing words that are vivid and stoke the desires of your prospect. So these are the things like having just gone through this with the cohort, for example, transforming chaos into clarity. Do you feel overwhelmed with all your notes and ideas, that are just sitting there and you're not getting as much value as you thought from them? And then the logos appealing to the logic, explain the mechanics of how your product or system works, map out a clear and coherent path that shows your prospect how you get them from problem to problem solved. These are the frameworks, the PKM stack, the creativity flywheel. Give a clear demonstration how the value of your product exceeds its cost. This is a framing of this sort of stuff that the second time through specifically, I was kind of like, I don't know. The first time I read it, ethos, pathos, and logos, maybe there is, a super smart person who loves stoicism, and the minute that you drop the name Aristotle, you're like, oh yeah, man, I've been waiting for the stoic approach to marketing, and this just clicks with me. But, it didn't for me.
Yeah. Understood. I understand that.
Everything up until that point, I feel like I can get on board with, but this is, even the first time that I read this, I could tell that the ethos, pathos, and logos were like important concepts that they were going to try to anchor. So I wrote them down in my MindNode file, but even then I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can get that. I can see that. All right, chapter 10. So now we get into creating some marketing content. This is a Tiago Forte chapter. So basically, they give an overview or an outline of what they're going to do here, and then they're going to actually give examples of the things they did. So nail down what you want to say, the claim, then support your claim with proof, and then use ethos, pathos, and logos to mix and match the proof element, create the content, and make it compelling as you go do that. And then they give examples of this.
So if you don't mind, this is the spot where they lost me when I was listening to the Audible version, because Tiago's talking about this and he's using the example of Leonardo's notebook, and all you got to do is find these images and make sure that they're, not copyrighted. And I'm listening to him describe it, and he's framing it as, this is the approach. You just fill in the blanks. And I'm like, that is a ton of work.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, at this point, like, I understand what you're doing and I understand what you're saying. And it's interesting to me because there's a lot of overlap between like the practical PKM stuff and the building a second brain stuff, to be honest. I don't think it's, 100% overlap, but a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, I was like, oh yeah, I guess, I was already thinking like, how do I do this stuff for like the practical PKM stuff? And this is where it's like, okay, just hearing you talk about this, you lost me.
Yeah. Yep. I can very much see that. So he gives three examples. He gives a belief and he talks about how it turns into some sort of marketing content. He gives a belief and talks about how it turns into some marketing content. Then he kind of does what he did before, where he's like, okay, and this is what, I took away from this, and this is what I learned. I learned I had to sell every click. I had to, do these. I decided I was going to do these things or I wouldn't do these things. So no unethical high pressure sales tactics, no complex funnels, right? And it's kind of just Tiago's taking of what Billy's talking about and turning it into his thing. So it's essentially, we get a window into the consultation sessions and then how Tiago like actually acted on it. And you get you get this kind of I guess it's almost like a motivator. Like, look what I did. So here's how I took this content and I actually did this thing, and here's what it turned into a tangible thing. So I think it gives a good example of how you can take the stuff that from the previous chapters and make it applicable or actually turn it into something.
Yeah. So this is interesting because I've followed Tiago for a long time, and I've also heard him share some of the stuff about like the book launch and how that actually cannibalized the Building a Second Brain cohorts. He doesn't do the cohorts anymore, you know. So I would love to pick his brain about how he actually sees the this stuff being applied. Like, what's his belief building ladder right now, and what is the thing that he's actually trying to sell? Like, what is the culmination of that for him? Because I feel like the stuff that he's talking about in the Simple Marketing for Smart People, this was sort of anchored in getting people to join the cohort, and then he just sort of accidentally maybe blew that all up when he wrote a really great book.
Yeah.
And the stuff that he talks about in here, you know, this is not stuff that he's doing to promote the book. This is stuff that he did at one point to promote the cohort or the course. But I feel like it's all kind of up in the air for him currently. YouTube has been a point of emphasis. And the examples that they share here are kind of like the historical Instagram, X/Twitter.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's dated and it didn't really age well, given what I know of where Tiago's at currently. So it'd be interesting to hear how it all fits together. That doesn't invalidate anything that he shares from this section, I think, but also it plants a seed of doubt when he's sharing the examples as to, oh, well, this is what I did and this is how you can do it. It's like, well, if it worked, why aren't you doing that still?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't have enough current knowledge of his activities to identify that. So that did not stand out to me. So that's good. That's good insight. Are we ready to go to 11?
Let's do it.
Okay, we're rounding it out, folks. So spot the pattern. So this another chapter by Billy Broas. He gets into this idea of commodity product versus, so he'll do fancy eggs and commodity eggs. And basically, if you're dealing with a commodity product, essentially that everybody understands and everybody's going to buy, then the real major negotiator or differencing you have between other products is price. But if you're selling fancy eggs, now you can really drive home and you can really produce, the copyright or not the copyright. What am I trying to say? The copy edit, like the content to really sell that fancy product and explain to them why your non-commodity product is valuable and why you need it. He has a section here where he goes through a couple of exercises to understand the relationship of the complexity to messaging needed. Same product. Are there these other things from a basic product to a premium product? He has those. He gives a list of factors to determine how much education and belief building you should do based on your price, based on the complexity, based on a bunch of different things. So this is where I think he gets into, or he tries to get into a little bit more of that. Let me help you figure out how to differentiate yourself in the market, or make belief building core messages, or make content that helps separate you from the rest of the competition.
Yeah, I don't really like the whole metaphor here. Like it's effective. It gets you to decide what are you selling, commodity eggs or fancy eggs. There are a lot of marketing resources out there which would take a different approach. They would just tell you, stop trying to sell the commodity eggs. And if you're going to sell fancy eggs, this is how you differentiate from the commodity. As I'm thinking about this, I kind of think for me personally, I don't know. Let's just take practical PKM as an example. Maybe you can help me go through this thought exercise. Okay. Obviously I want to be fancy eggs, not commodity eggs in terms of PKM. But at some point, like, you have to speak to the people who are viewing you as a commodity and offer them something, right? So my commodity eggs are maybe like the starter vault, and the fancy eggs are the life HQ. And there's going to be only a small segment of the people who just want the commodity eggs, the free, resources that are going to upgrade there. But you kind of have to do both maybe for at least the stuff that I do. I'm thinking you can't just be like, oh, well, obviously I'm fancy, and these are the reasons why I'm so much better than your standard commodity eggs. Like you have to embrace the commodity before you can make yourself fancy. I think.
I think in your world you're right in terms of there are people who are going to want to come in and they're going to want to learn. They've heard about knowledge management. They've heard about this idea of you can get more efficient and effective with your time and knowledge, if you do certain things. And I think they're going to want a product at a level that allows them to dip their toe into it, see if they like what you're doing, see if they like your system and your approach. And that's the commodity product, right? Like, so here's this thing and here's the commodity product. And then there's going to be a much smaller percentage of that, like you described, who are going to say, Mike, I want to work with you every week to make the best system I can that fits my needs the best possible. You know what I mean? Like, and I think of this as, a good example would be coaching, right? Like, so I'm a business leader, and there are the people who are going to want just the general cohort. There's 30 people in the group, and I'm just looking for general coaching, just generalized coaching. And then there's going to be the people who are like, nope, I want the premium edition. I want to spend $50,000 a year for you to be my personal coach. And it's like, okay. Like, and I think that's the world you live in. You live in both of those worlds. You make fancy eggs and you make commodity eggs.
Well, kinda. So like you can't sell fancy eggs until you know exactly what people value about those fancy eggs. And I guess in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that this is not a either or
agreed
decision at this point. And the example I'm going to use is a product called Right Message by Brennan Dunn. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so if you go to a website like the Suite Setup or Creator Science, you'll see a little survey box in the lower right-hand corner, and they'll ask you these different questions about whatever topic that this website speaks to. Okay, and when you answer those questions, what it does is it logs that basically with the cookie when you go to the website. And then if you do sign up for the email list, you basically have in your email service provider, the person, this person really values X, and it could be like, I'm actually working on implementing this right now. And so all of my stuff is like, what is it about Obsidian that you're how are you trying to use Obsidian? Is it you want to manage your tasks and projects? You want to be more creative? So people answer these questions, and then you can customize your marketing messaging when you send them emails, because they've told you, I really want to be more creative with Obsidian. I can say, Obsidian is the tool that's going to unlock your creativity and allow you to go from chaos to clarity. Most people who don't care about creativity, like that message doesn't matter. So I'm going to say something different to them. Mm-hmm. But for this person who has already told me, like, this is what I want, now I can say, hey, I can help you get specifically what you want. Those are the fancy eggs.
Yeah.
But I have to have some sort of messaging to sell the commodity eggs, just to get them to come to the website, to watch the video, to download the starter vault, whatever, before we can have those conversations. And they tell me, this is specifically what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
It does. And I would think that Broas would say, okay, well, then there's different channels. Your commodity message goes on different channels that are much more likely to be seen, to have you seen by people who don't know you. It's their first time interacting with you. So like, I would think like general raw YouTube, right? Like you pop up in the algorithm for somebody, they see you and they are attracted by your commodity egg and they go, yep, I'm going to click through. And then once they become part of your newsletter subscription, now they're the fancy egg people.
Kinda. So there's a really good book by Brendan Dunn called This Is Personal. And he's the guy who made like the Mastering Convert Kit course, and that I bought it, and it's really complicated, and I'm still trying to work my way through it. So I'm just like tip of the iceberg when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I understand the value here. And so I think this is a more direct and honestly better approach to making compelling marketing that speaks directly to the pain points that people are solving than trying to figure out all of these different beliefs. And it's not an either or. The best version is probably a combination of these things.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
this is the one that, resonates with me more than, are you going to sell fancy eggs or are you going to sell commodity eggs?
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, we probably need to move on. So chapter 12, it's a next steps chapter. So smart next steps by Billy again. Gives 5 action steps here. So step 1, revisit your current audience and think about your current audience. Step 2, complete your core messaging document. Action step 3, create new marketing material. Action step 4, find more opportunities to incorporate belief building. And action step 5, make the most of other trainings you've taken. And how do you incorporate those into there? So I think there's a little bit of a acknowledgement in that step 5 that says, hey, we're not the only approach. Like, how do you leverage these other tools that you've done into the system? I think, and I don't remember them ever saying this, but I think so I'm going to go back on that smart people. I think if this was simple marketing for novice marketers, I don't think that's as nearly a catchy title, but I think that would be a really good, or almost a better title for this book, right? Because this is presenting a good framework for the people who don't know anything about marketing or know very little about marketing, but are interested in learning more there. And I understand why they did it, right? The smart people tied into Tiago, I think, and kind of made that as the example. He's the quote unquote smart, incredibly intelligent person who makes this thing, who then is going to put it out there, but doesn't know anything about marketing. So I think these action steps do a really nice job summarizing all the stuff that's been in the book for the novice marketer who says, here's how you start. Just start by doing these 5 things and then see where you get. And kind of roll into that. So I think for the audience that the book was intended for, I think it's a good chapter 13. It's a good wrap up to the book. Or sorry, chapter 12, excuse me.
I agree. And I like the make the most of the other trainings that you've taken. That is an interesting item on the list, because like you said, it assumes that this isn't the only thing that you've gone through, and this isn't going to probably anyways completely upend everything else that you're doing. You're going to figure out how to slot it in with some of the other stuff. The one I think maybe I don't like going through the second time is the complete your core message document. And I think I don't know what to do with that. On the one hand, I do like it, because if you've never done that sort of thing, you need to do that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, the core message document, I think, is maybe not the most effective way to do it. As I mentioned, I took the 5 light bulbs and I made a obsidian template out of it. That's been more effective for me. And these are just questions and really tools to get you thinking a specific way. This is really the intention behind everything that I've done in Life HQ, is to get you to think a certain way. It's not, you got to follow this specific process or this specific system. The real value is in asking the questions. So I don't know, maybe that is good enough. But yeah, I like this as chapter 12, and then chapter 13 is, I have one specific thing from there. But this is essentially the beginning of the end of the book, and it's a good way to end it, I think.
Yeah. So chapter 13, a final word of advice for smart marketers by Billy. This is really like a motivation, go get them kind of a thing. So there's a whole section on, stop being quiet, get out there, just tell them what you want to tell them kind of a thing. Go out there, and do it. And then there's a whole other section of do's and don'ts, right? Where they list this whole series of, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. I won't go through those, because at this point, you're either going to like that or not. So I think that we'll save that for if you want to read the book. But it's a different way to pitch, I guess, what they've written about in the rest of the book. One of the examples would be, don't get caught up in building these complex, confusing marketing systems. It's much more simple than that. So it's just a summary of what they've talked about before, written in a different way. So, Mike, what was your takeaway from 13?
Well, I have an action item associated with this, but I want to just double click on something that you mentioned. Don't build the complex marketing systems. I kind of feel like you do need to do that, even if you subscribe to this, because how else are you going to test the different beliefs that you're trying to build? There's really no way around that, I feel. So it sounds nice. And for the entrepreneur who is really who they're going after, they've maybe not thought about marketing for a long time because it feels complicated. And so maybe that's necessary in order to get them to take the first step. But I think it's also maybe a little bit misleading if that's really what they're trying to say.
And let me focus in on something and see if you agree with this. I actually don't even think it's just the entrepreneur. I think it's the solopreneur. Like, I think their target audience is really that solopreneur who's created that thing, and then they're trying to figure out how to market it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The action item that I have from this goes with the stop being so quiet. Essentially, what that means to me is you have to be present on the social media platforms. And this has been something that has been on my to-do list for a very long time. 2025, I am committed to figuring this out. And I want to start sharing more frequently on social media. And the argument could be made that I should have been doing this already, given that the Practical PCAM cohort is launching in just a couple of weeks. But I want to do this, and I'm willing to share this publicly and be held accountable to this. I've got a couple different things that I've been thinking about with this. The tool that I want to use for this, I think, is a tool called Hype Fury. And the reason that I want to use that one is that as a built-in thing, which allows you to take the text and then create these like text images that you can share on Instagram as well. I know a lot of people who are, they've had success using Instagram, but you can basically just schedule your content. You can write it once and then publish it multiple places.
Okay.
And that one allows you to publish everywhere that I want to be, with the exception currently of Blue Sky. I don't know why they have not added Blue Sky yet, but the minute that they add Blue Sky, that's my tool. And so I'm currently kind of messing, because I have subscriptions to multiple of these things, Typefully currently, because that you can actually publish to Blue Sky. You can't actually publish to Instagram from Typefully. It's just text. But that's what I'm using at this exact moment. But I'm hoping that by the time this goes live, I can be all in with Hype Fury.
Okay. Very, very cool. All right. So, Mike, that wraps us up on the book discussion. Let's move on to action items.
All right.
I had 2 action items come out of this book. So I want to apply belief building to CCU engineering and to the choosing engineering kind of like little prototype that I had. Like what would it look like to help people figure out how to choose engineering? And then I want to develop the ladder for this CCU engineering and choosing engineering. So for both of those, and really what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to practice these, see like how well I think they would work. I'm not committed to going through all 5 of the action steps, but I really want to do these 2 things and see how that pans out as I move forward with both of those areas of life. How about you? What action items did you have?
All right. So I had 2 specific action items. One was to build out the ladder of importance for my topic, and that's kind of a carryover from the first time that I went through this. So I don't know if I'll actually do that or not, but I'm going to give it the old college try. The other one, which I just mentioned, I'm just going to put get social. So I want to start publishing multiple times per week to social media platforms. And I've got the content. I'm already writing it. I just need to repurpose it and share it more consistently.
Nice. Very nice. All right. So next is style and rating. It's my book, so I will go first. You might have been able to tell as I consider myself a novice marketer, right? I will not say a smart person. I would consider myself a novice marketer. And what I will tell you is this book really resonated with me. Like, I like this book a lot. I thought this book was written well. I thought the examples provided were really, really good. For someone who has very little, aka no marketing experience, and who came into it with the idea of, marketing is sleazy and I don't like it, and it's just a bunch of gimmicks to try to get me to push go. The way they pitched it, the way they framed it, the tools that they provided, and the frameworks that they provided, I really resonated with this book. I liked the fact that I think I could take this book, and I think I would want to do another reading through it, but I actually think I could develop a fairly decent, I don't want to say marketing plan, but at least a fairly decent marketing foundation based on the concepts of this book. And then what it would let me do is it would let me, through talking to people like you and through working these ideas, figure out where I would need to go research more. Like, oh, okay, so I've decided that this is the core message and this is the channel that I'm going to use. What are the best, most effective tools for that channel? And then I would go and I would actually know where to look and know how to look. Whereas right now I might put, the cart before the horse, if you will. And I might start looking at the channels and looking at the tools for the channels when it's like, wait, you don't even know what you want to say to these people, and how you want to say it and why you need to say it to them. So I like the fact that I think this book lays a really, really strong foundation that you can then build upon moving forward, especially for someone who has very little to no experience marketing. So I'm going to rate this book a 4 out of 5. Right. So I think it was a 4-star book. I would recommend, especially for people who don't have a lot of marketing experience. I think you could get a lot out of reading this book. I think the book works better if you actually have an example of something that you're trying to do and that you actually want to try to market. Like, I think having that in the back of your head, and as they're throwing out these ideas, you're running through those examples in your head, or you're trying to develop these things. I think that actually would help this book a lot. Help you as you read this book. It's not something that I think they needed to do, but something as you read this book. So 4 out of 5. Mike, what's your summary on style and rating?
Oh man, well, I have to rate it something, don't I?
You do.
I'm very conflicted because as much as I shared the things that I did not like about going through it a second time in this podcast episode, I still feel like this is the best marketing book I have ever read.
Wow. I would never have thought you would have made that statement, ever.
Yeah. So I feel a little bit bad. Maybe I was a little bit harsh on some of the nitpicks as we went through it. I don't think that the system, for lack of a better term, and I don't think they really pitch it as a system. So that's an unfair characterization, maybe in a lot of ways. I don't think that, I read through it again that I'm like, okay, I'm just going to apply this. It's a tripwire product. This is designed for the people who really should be interested in the 5 light bulbs, in my opinion. That is the logical next place to go from this. It's not very clear that is the next thing, as I mentioned. I had to do some digging, and I eventually found it, and I really enjoyed going through that particular course. And I've recommended that a lot of different times. I've recommended this book a lot of different times. I think for a lot of people who want to understand marketing a little bit better, reading this book will give you some things to think about. It'll give you some valuable questions to ask with your teams. And there's a very good chance that you won't need to go any further. I think if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur like me, this isn't the be all end all, and that's completely okay. I'm torn between 4 and 5, to be honest.
Okay.
What am I gonna rate this? You know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna rate it 5 stars.
Okay.
With all the caveats that I shared, that For some people, this isn't going to go deep enough, but that doesn't mean that it's not a great resource. I think for someone like me who is really trying to figure out, how do I dial in the systems of my business, this isn't going to be enough. And there is going to be some things that I'll take from this, and I'll figure out how to apply some of the things from, I mentioned the Alex Hormozy books. I actually did really enjoy $100 million offers, I think was the first one. I haven't gone through fully $100 million leads yet. I think marketing is one of those things that you can continue to study it and learn about it the rest of your life. You will never completely master this. However, there's a lot of resources that are shared in the marketing space. Is like, oh, well, you got to read this. You got to read this. Billy Broas actually mentioned in here at one point an older book on marketing. Did you catch the name of that?
Is it the one? I have it highlighted here. Give me a second. Does he mention the author? Like it's a copywriting book?
Yes. I found it. You can't get it on Amazon. I think has one for like $300. I found it on eBay for like $50. So I ended up buying it.
Nice.
I haven't gone through that one yet, but those are the types of books that, I hear those recommendations, and that tells me, that this isn't the original definitive source. This is a newer version of copywriting principles that have been around for a long time. Everything's a remix. Nothing's completely original. I think if you are interested at all in marketing in 2025, this is the book that I would recommend that you read first. It's not the only book that I would recommend you read, and you'll probably have a bunch of questions if you really want to master this stuff going forward, but this is the place to start. I've also recommended this to a bunch of people who wanted to get into marketing, and they have all thoroughly enjoyed this book. So I think it's an easy read. It's a entertaining read, and it's in the title, right? Simple marketing for smart people. It's not going to be insulting to anyone's intelligence. It's not going to be, oh, you just got to do this one thing, and then everything's just going to magically click into place. Like there is none of that. It is a tripwire product, but it is not salesy in the least. You could very easily get through this and be like, what else does Billy Broas do? I don't even know what I should be looking for next. Yeah. So for some people, that's going to be a really good thing.
All right. I'm not gonna talk about it a lot, but you changed my mind. It's a 5-star book. You're right. I changed my rating.
So you're labeling it 5 now. Okay. Yeah. Well, then I think I have to bring it down to a 4, just because
what?
I don't think I can live with this being a double 5-star book. That's the thing. Like, I don't think this is a double 5-star book. I think it is a very good book, but I don't think I want to put the gold Bookworm seal on this one. Be like, hey, everybody, go get this one. For certain people, this is amazing. For other people, it's good.
Then I have to say I need a 5, you need a 4, because that's just the way it has to be. It's just the way it has to be. This is the way it has to be. Okay. All right, Mike. Next book. So let's talk about our upcoming books. You have the book that's coming up next. What are we reading next?
Yeah, the next book is Poor Charlie's Almanac by Peter Kaufman, I believe. Poor Charlie, it talks about Charlie Munger, and he's was Warren Buffett's right-hand man. So I've heard a lot of great things about this book. I think you mentioned one of the blurbs is like there's $1 billion education in this book. Yep. I have not made as much progress with this one as I have wanted to because I've been sick, but I did start it, and it's been pretty entertaining so far.
Did you find the online version of this book at stripe.press?
I did not, no.
Okay, so you need to look at the online version of this book, Mike. I know you're an analog through and through, but I'm gonna send you it in the chat right now, and we'll put the link in the show notes for people. So Stripe, like the Stripe company, payment processing type company, they take like really what they think are really good books, and they like publish them in a really, really creative format.
Yeah,
like a really creative format. So take a look at that. Tell me what you think. I'm intrigued to have us talk about that in that style of publishing next time.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a different version of this, but yeah. So like the first chapter here is the Harvard School commencement speech. The first chapter of the book doesn't get into that, but
no. So click on the top. You'll see that they break it into, chapter 1 is the portrait of Charles.
Right. I clicked on the wrong one. Yep. You're right. Okay.
No,
cool.
It's actually hard to navigate, but at the same time, once you
it
start
looks
going
really
through
cool.
it's really because they pop up images and different things.
Yep.
So I thought you'd have a fun time looking at that. I randomly
Sweet.
stumbled into that when I was trying to find the book.
Very cool.
Okay, so I'm the book after that. We're going to read The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Futaki Koga. That book came out of one of the recent books we read, where I want to say it might have been Anti-Time Management, but I can't remember which one it actually came out of. But there was this idea of like, don't be afraid to be disliked, and then here's this good reference. And I looked into that book, and I think it'll be a good one for us and for our audience. So those are our upcoming books. Mike, are you reading any Gap books right now?
I am not. I am hoping to get Poor Charlie's Almanac done on time.
Yep. Your sickness really threw a wrench into that.
Yes, it did.
Okay, so I said last time I wasn't going to read any Gap books, and I actually was able to make it through like 2 or 3 different Gap books because we were on semester break. So like, I was just powering through. Now, granted, I wasn't like reading word for word. I was listening to some parts of it and reading other parts of it. So it's like, it wasn't reading like I would read for Bookworm, but I made it through a couple different Gap books, and that was a lot of fun. I'm intentionally not doing any Gap books right now, because the semester started back up and all of my additional reading goes into prepping for classes. So nope, there are no Gap books right now, and there will not be any Gap books for the foreseeable future.
All right.
All right, Mike. So let's put oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the book. Let's put Simple Marketing for Smart People on the shelf. Let's pick up Poor Charlie's Almanac for the next one. If you all are interested in more of what we do a pro show. So for the pro show on today's show, we talked about journaling. We talked about meditation. You can get that by going to patreon.com/bookwormfm and checking out, subscribing there. It's $7 a month. So not only do you get the pro show, but you also get a wallpaper, you get book notes, you get an ad-free version of the show. So there are some perks there, and it helps us support the show. It helps us keep things going and pay for the different miscellaneous things that come up in making the show. So if you're interested in doing that, patreon.com/bookwormfm and pick up Poor Charlie's Almanac.